Hello and welcome to the Fully Charged Plus podcast. Really good episode this week. I'll tell you what happened to me when I knew I was doing this one. I was actually not so much anxious, but a bit depressed because of the current state of it's really the race that we're experiencing in the UK between a massive uptake of electric vehicles and the charging infrastructure, which is now panickingly rushing to try and keep up with demand. And I was kind of, I've been hearing a lot on the Twitters and on the comments about chargers not working and people having trouble with chargers and queues at chargers and all that stuff. And I think it is kind of specific to the UK market. So for people overseas in different countries, there's going to be varying levels of it. There'll either be less electric cars, but some charging. There'll be more localized stuff. Norway seem to be coping with it. They've got far more electric cars than we have. I know Denmark and the Netherlands, the two markets that I know quite well, where it does seem to be, it's not quite as challenging as it is here. But we really have seen a genuinely huge increase in the number of electric vehicles on the road. We're just coming up to 500,000 electric cars in the UK, which is, considering it was probably 1,000 it would have been a few hundred when I first got Mitsubishi i-MiEV many years ago. It is a very different world. And so today we're talking with Osprey Charging, and it's a fascinating conversation. This is a fascinating conversation with Ian Johnston from Osprey, who is just a ball of energy and of optimism. And I think the thing is that there's basically three big charging networks in the UK that are proving to be reliable. And that's really all you want. Easily accessible and reliable. You turn up at one of their chargers, you tap to pay, and it works. That's all. That's it. That's the top and bottom of it. And certainly Osprey is one of them. I know we mentioned the others. I'm not going to mention them now, but anyone in the UK knows which ones are which. And you kind of start to avoid the ones that have been less reliable historically. But Ian has a fantastic grasp of this. Obviously, he's right on the inside of this business. So it's a really interesting episode, and I really hope you enjoy it. Before we start, though, I just really do want to talk about our sponsor, which, it was good. I had a long conversation with Jordan from Myenergi the other day, and it was just amazing to hear what they're doing and how successful they are and how lucky we are to be sponsored by them. This podcast is sponsored by Myenergi. And if you just go to myenergi.com, I'll spell it for you, myenergi.com. Their webpage tells you everything that they do. And I can honestly say that I support what they do because I actually use the technology they make. So the first thing I got was a Zappy charger, and that's when we met them many years ago. I met Jordan in a garden in Orkney that had a Zappy charger, and what a Zappy charger does, all a Zappy charger does is, and I say all, it's really important, is you can charge it flat out from the grid, just like any other charger, no problem. You can also charge it at a set time, so that it will come on at a set time and it will charge your car, like for instance, when you want to use off-peak electricity. And it will also take the majority of the electricity that it's putting in your car from your solar panels. If you have solar panels, it will take as much as it can from them. Or you can set it to a point where it only takes electricity generated by your solar panels. So, for instance, in my house, and there's a whole other episode about this, but my house, I do have batteries. I have a lot of solar. I have electric heating, electric water heating, electric cooking. But there are times now, and it's becoming more common, when nothing in the house needs any electricity. It's all like fully charged. It's already hot. It's already cooking, whatever it is. There's no demand from the house. So when the solar is doing that, then every electron that is produced by the solar panels goes into the car. And I added, the other day, there was this freak sunny day in the middle of February, a Sunday, and by chance my car was pretty empty. And the batteries were full and the cooker was hot and the water was hot and I wasn't doing any washing. And I plugged the car in and set the Zappy to charge it just from the solar, and I added 120 miles of range from solar panels. There is no other way. There's no other technology. Doesn't matter about petrol, diesel, forget those. Doesn't matter about hydrogen. There is no other technology that currently I can plug a car in and refuel it at home for no money. There's no transaction. Now, without question, and I've said this so many times before, yes, I paid for the inverter and the solar panels and the installation and the charger and everything to do with that, and the car. Enormous expense over decades to setting that system up. But you can't argue that the actual fuel that made that car drive 120 miles did not cost any money. That is an extraordinary change. But to make that happen, there is also other technology that my house is a Myenergi house. So I've got an Eddy, which is this little box, and it's in the airing cupboard where the hot water tank is. I don't even look at it. I don't even see it. Every now and then I glance at it just to be polite, because I feel like I ignore it. And the Eddy controls everything. So when there's a lot of solar and the car isn't plugged in and I'm not charging it, and the excess solar is going into the grid, which is fine because it goes to other people in my neighborhood. But if the Eddy can sense that there's no hot water, it heats the water. I've come back when I thought I'd turned the water off because I didn't need it because I wasn't here, and it's heated the water. Because it's made, well, I may as well put all that energy into heating the water. I come back and I've got a tank full of hot water, and my Myenergi hot water tank is amazing. And that means that's, say, enough to shower about 10 showers in a row. Even with teenagers, they used to shower for between 4 and 5 hours. They've now grown up, so their showering time is reduced somewhat. But, incredible. And that cost me no money for fuel to heat that water. The same with the cooker, same with the central heating now, which is a heat battery. I can charge that from solar, which is going to be, I absolutely agree, it's going to be less because I only want the heater during the winter when there's less solar. But what Myenergi do is amazing, and their app, here's the thing. Okay, so I'm going to talk about 2 particular apps that work, that are in conjunction with this new technology that we're all using. The Tesla app is faultless. So I can see the Tesla batteries, the solar, how much solar I've going. I can see the car, what the range of the car is. Is it charging? Can I put the heating on before I get it? All those things. Tesla one works perfectly. And the Myenergi app works perfectly. Can I turn the water heating on? Where's the electricity going? Is it going into the cooker? Is it going into the hot water? Is it going into the washing machine? Where's it going? Who's using it? How much am I producing? How much is in the batteries? All of that works perfectly in the Myenergi app. I've tried a lot of other, in massive inverted commas, smart meter pieces of technology, and I gave up within minutes because they were hopeless and absolutely heartbreakingly bad. So I've given Myenergi a lot of plugs, but they deserve it. They have grown from like 4 people to thousands. It's huge. It's a British company that makes the products in this country. So if you live in the UK, and actually they're now selling them all over the world, it's a really exciting success story. Myenergi is putting the I back into British innovation. Myenergi is putting the I back into inventing the future. Myenergi is putting the I back into inspiring a nation. Recharging the world with green, smart energy. Charge your EV with your PV and more. Visit myenergi.com and help to spark the green revolution. Myenergi, driving the charge to a greener future. Anyway, enough. Let us get on with the podcast. So, please welcome to the Fully Charged Plus podcast from Osprey Charging, and they've got some really cool chargers, Ian Johnston. Ian, thank you very much for joining us on the Fully Charged Plus podcast. I was this is so topical. We couldn't have recorded this at a better time, I think. The incredible increase in the number of electric cars on the road and let's be kind, the expanding but occasionally frail public charging network in the UK.
That is very kind. Yes, there's a brilliant race between the registrations of EVs and the deployment of charging infrastructure, and I think everyone is working so hard to keep them at pace with each other.
Yeah,
and when the pace isn't kept, there are very loud voices to highlight it. So there's a lot of work to be done, but there's a lot of work that's happening, which hopefully we can talk about.
Yes, no, that's very good. But I think let's go straight for because the two things which I am going to admit openly and publicly, I didn't even consider until people said them to me, are accessibility, of course, for particularly for disabled people. And I have no excuse because I had a really good mate who was quite severely disabled but could drive and was capable of. I had an amazing car that was adapted for him to be able to drive. So it's not like I've never experienced it. I've experienced it firsthand. I've been driven by him in a car and should have thought of that, and it never occurred to me. That's one thing. And the other one, I've lived with women all my life. It never crossed my mind for a moment that the charger I used at the back of the toilets at the back of the town hall in some town I'd never been to, that's in the dark, was a little bit challenging for a woman on her own, because it was incredibly annoying for me. So I was furious as a capable middle-class white male. But my God, now you see it. And it was, in fact, Maddie Moat was the first person, one of my presenters.
Yeah.
The first person who just said it. She was driving an electric car for the first time, had been to see her mum and dad, was driving back home. It was late at night. She stopped at a charger. The charger worked. There was nothing wrong with it. She could plug in, it charged straight away. It was in the darkest corner of a dark car park, and she was on her own. You just think, who made those decisions? What person in the local council, the company that installed it, the electricity supply, went, let's put it right over there. So the location of the first generation of chargers was an appalling pig's breakfast of unbelievable annoyance and ignorance, I think.
It was. Well, and I think so many of the things we talk about around the charging hardware, the reliability, the accessibility. So what lets us down as an industry is the legacy infrastructure.
Yes.
And, we're installing hundreds of charge points everywhere, but we're only as good as our worst site. And if it's the first-time driver, that's their view of us as a network. So you're right. There's a lot of work to be done. I think there's nothing more soul-destroying for us when we finally deliver a tricky site that's taken a while to get live, and you see some feedback from people who say, well, this isn't quite up to scratch. So there's so many people working so hard to deploy this infrastructure, and we all want it to be the best. We all want it to be loved. And I think it's worth just spending a moment to reflect on the fact that what the charging networks want ultimately is for you, the driver, to turn left to us and not right to our competitors. So we only have a desire to make it the best site for the driver. It's all we want to do. And we want to win the awards and win the league tables and then, build more sites off the back of it. So there's a huge desire to get this right. But there's reasons why in some cases we can't deploy what we'd love to deploy in some sites as well. Yeah. And then there's the legacy site issue as well we need to deal with. So I think if you look at the networks who are deploying at pace today, many of us are achieving that pace through working with national retail partners. And the problem there is that, of course, we're not in complete control of the car park demise. Yeah. And indeed, in many of the cases, our partners don't control the retail park within which they sit or the land asset that they sit in. So this is why all of this talk in the media is so important right now, but also the standards which are coming in. And the standards, they have to set the bar on what's acceptable, but I think they also need to set the legal minimum on what should be delivered if people want to enjoy the benefits of EV charging on their site. So we're lucky to work with some great partners who really want to do the best thing for the EV driver. And so with them, they're giving us more space to build the perfect site. But it isn't also the case. And we must respect that these land retail owners, they're businesses, they're to make a profit, and they can't just give us 25 bays to make our charging site. So these are the hurdles that we and our peers are facing today. And I think the media focus, the industry focus, and hopefully the legal standards will help us to achieve that. Yeah,
because I mean the report that I read it quite carefully about a while ago, and I've just been skimming over it today. But the report, the Which report about public charging, which I'm assuming you were involved in the creation of that. But I mean that, it touches on so many really important points. And actually, I'll put a link to that in the show notes for this episode, because I think it's really important. But one of the things I didn't, because I don't know about those sort of standards. So PAS 1899, is that's a set of guidelines? Is it for how you put in a publicly accessible charger? Is that
it's an accessibility standard.
Right.
So it will set the bar as to this is what you should do if you want to build a truly accessible site. Right. But as I say, it won't be the legal requirement, and that's what the consultation that's going to take place this summer will seek to establish: is this right. Should this be the legal minimum, or is this just what best practice looks like? And I think if you were to ask any of the charger networks like ourselves, what do you want to deliver? We would love to deliver the most accessible site on every occasion. Where we do not own the land or the car park, we're not in control. And really what we need when you talk about the space to move around a vehicle, whether you're a wheelchair user, whether you're heavily pregnant, whether you have 15 kids in car seats, you need space around the vehicle. And that means taking up what are nowadays pretty narrow parking bays anyway. So we need more bays. We need to be able to remove curbs. We need to, plant the charge points lower into the ground. We need that flexibility within someone else's demise to really deliver what the public need and want right now. So this is a bigger focus than just an emphasis on the charging networks. It's on the retailers and the landowners with whom they are tenants for as well.
Right. Because I'm wondering, this is an area that I've never even considered before. But for example, I know for a fact from first-hand experience that, say, 8 to 5 years ago, car dealerships, so the very awkward model of selling cars was there's a car maker and there's a completely separate business that's the dealership with the car maker's name above it that makes it look like they run it, but actually they don't. And convincing the people that run those businesses that actually the electric version of the cars they're selling is quite good and they shouldn't put it at the back and try and push everyone to buy a diesel. That argument has shifted, in that time, because when I first came across it, don't need to mention the brands, but there was incredible negativity amongst the dealership people. They just thought they were rubbish. They're not proper real cars, and who wants to buy those things? And that has changed. It's taken a long time, and it still isn't universal, but it's definitely improved. And I'm wondering now whether the landowners, the landlords, who maybe 10 years ago, when someone said we'd like to put some chargers in your car park, and they'd have gone, what? Electric car chargers. What for? To charge electric cars. What are they? It would have been the base level would have been so low. And I'm just wondering now whether that has improved. If you approach, I don't know, a large landlord or a company that has car parks that are they a little bit more, at least aware of why you would do it now?
Oh, I'd say it's gone far beyond that, Robert. I think when in 2018, 2019, where we and the others in the industry were approaching the owners of these car parks all the time and the big retail chains and the supermarkets, at that point, it was, is this EV thing going to happen? I think what happened just before in the summer before the pandemic, most of the company directors, the board members, ESG became so high on their agenda that they knew they had to do something in this space. And I think during the pandemic, clearly everyone became so much more aware around the health concerns. And then as the businesses returned from the pandemic, they knew they had to deliver an EV strategy in their car parks. But the problem for them is that the car parks are an asset. They're a financial asset, which of course they need to generate as much revenue as they can from. So what we've seen is these major businesses that own the car parks, the supermarkets, the retail parks, working with consultants and advisors to try and find out what's their role in this EV transition globally. So I'm in a lucky seat today. I know all the major procurement processes that are going on from the supermarkets, the retail parks, the big retail chains. So I'm excited I know all the contracts that are being issued. I know all this huge rollout that's going to come. That's great. But can the charging networks convince these guys to let us build what we know is right for the driver in terms of the space? Because it's very easy to say, look, I want to have 2 chargers in every site. You can have that dark corner over there. I don't want it near my shop because I don't want the driver going in to complain to my staff. And we need to educate the retailers and the landlords to say, no, listen, if you want to be seen as a leader in your space, this is what excellent looks like. And I think what we've all established now, what we all know in the bubble we live in, where we live and breathe this every day, we know what great looks like. And the problem we have today is, whilst there are 5,500 rapid chargers across the UK, which is great, a lot of it is not the right type of infrastructure, and it's not in the most important places. So I think we've proven as an industry we know what great looks like. There's just only a little bit of great out there, and now we need to deploy that great example everywhere. Accessibility is the one thing that we can't control ourselves. We know what the best charges are. We know what's important for cable lengths and contactless payment and roaming. We know we can do all that stuff. We're doing it brilliantly in some sites. This is the last bit we've got to get right, and we need more than just goodwill to give us the space to build truly accessible sites. And I think there's a danger if you look at precedents from the past of people saying, well, 1 in 10 bays can be disabled bays. It doesn't work. It doesn't work because whether you have full access or not, for the charging bays, the different ports on the vehicles, you really just need to give people the right space. We're almost replanning what car parking should be like. Yeah. And again, the benefits of taking that hit on losing a few bays to make a great array of accessible charging bays is that the driver will choose your site.
Yeah.
People will drive to your site in their droves to use your fantastic, open, undercover, lit, safe charging site. So I think we're lucky. There are some great retailers out there who get it. We've got some great partners. I mean, a few of the first hub sites we're going to deploy this year with Marston, so we've already done a great rollout with. But they now understand that if they want to be seen as leaders and to take the plaudits from taking the big step on EV infrastructure, they've got to do it right. So they are working with us to deliver wide bays and canopies and lighting and putting the chargers in a place where people feel safe because there's others around them at night time. So I think it's happening, but again, Robert, the risk is it's inconsistent, and it should be the minimum for everybody.
Yeah,
right,
I mean that is definitely the problem. Is the inconsistency is so. That's what's so hard to deal with, you know. When you and I think it's particularly when you do a journey that you haven't done before.
Yeah,
you know that, and it is. I'll tell you one thing. So I asked. This is a few years ago. I asked people on Twitter just to tweet to me when they went to a charger, it worked, and they filled the car up and they drove away. Like no drama, no hassle, nothing happened. Because all I hear about is this constant torrent of tweets going, I tried to use this charger and they didn't. And when I phoned up, they didn't, you know. And what was really annoying is when I asked people to do that, enough of them did for it to be incredibly tedious. Yes. So that every time I looked at my timeline on Twitter, it was hundreds of people who charged without any problem at all and then carried on their journey. Which is by far the majority of what happens, but you're not going to hear about that. No. I do think it's annoying when you do.
Yeah, I think if you look at since the start of the pandemic, you know, we've grown from 3,500 rapid chargers to 5,500, so near enough double the size of the infrastructure in the UK. I'm not saying now that's enough; it's not. No. But what the difference of the new infrastructure is that it's predominantly installed and operated by truly reliable networks. The hardware works; it's accessible; it's contactless. You can roam on it. So we've got two worlds. There's everything that went in pre-pandemic, and there's everything that's going in since. From what is probably a basket of 5 or 6 really good networks doing the right thing with great kit, with the driver at the centre of our thought process. So there are two worlds of infrastructure now. So I think the problem is that it only takes one journalist to go to one legacy site to write the industry off. But I think even with the networks that are getting a lot of stick out there today, most of the new infrastructure is great.
Yeah.
So as time passes and we get to a point where the majority of the infrastructure out there is great, we're going to live in a different world, which is really important because we've lived in this bubble of the early adopters who are like a passionate cult, so supportive. You know, they even know what the error codes are on the screen. We're moving to a mass market world now where this stuff has to work. It's got to work. We will not get a second chance, right?
No.
So I think it's really important that we move there. There's a challenge that concerns me about this, which is that what we and you and your listeners want today are large charging hubs of high-power chargers that are easy to use. And to install that sort of infrastructure needs big grid infrastructure. It's there, it exists, but it takes time. You know, these hubs, on average, take between 4 and 12 months to deliver. But let's say there's an average of a 9-month lead on getting this stuff built, even before the global lead times of chips and substations and all. So as we stand here today, there are thousands of charging hubs being developed by the major networks. But the problem is they're not going to be live in July. It's not going to happen. And the school holidays start in July. And there is going to be hundreds of thousands of electric cars most of whom who have access to home charging that then hit the public networks. And the infrastructure this summer will not be ready. And it's going to cause some really quite painful headlines for us in the industry. But it's going to miss the reality that there are great examples of infrastructure out there, and there are thousands of great infrastructure sites being deployed. It's just going to take a bit more time. So I think we're going to gradually leave. We used to talk so much about the importance of contactless payment 2 years ago. Government consultation after consultation after how important is contactless, and now we don't talk about it anymore. It's great. So we're going to get there. But because of the scale of what people want in these hubs, it's going to take a bit longer, which means we're going to need to really over-communicate about what is happening. Good does exist, but it isn't everywhere.
Because I mean, it may be one of the slight advantages of the chip shortage and the manufacturing shortages is that I think the sales of all the cars, private cars, have gone down anyway, just because of loads of reasons, but also because of you can't buy them. I mean, the amount of people we know who've ordered, one or two electric car or whatever they have, but the waiting time is now long. So if they've got them all by July, we're stuffed.
Well,
it's a pathetic excuse. But it doesn't quite hold.
No, but it comes down to the importance of communication and explanation.
Yeah.
The SMMT now, of course, is representing their members, and they're talking about how we've gone from one rapid for every 30 cars. Now it's every 50. It's going to go to 70 before we throw it back. That sort of rhetoric is really unhelpful because, again, it ignores the basics of the fact that 70% of people are going to charge at home. It ignores the basics of the fact that it's not a geographical spread that should be even. You need to put the charging where the people need it. So there's a lot of unhelpful media, and I think the industry, we're all working together as charging networks to get the right messages out there. There's brilliant people that work for your organisation and others that are helping to spread the good news. But we've got to explain what good infrastructure is in the right places. We know there are some key locations that have to get proper rapid charging. We've talked so much about motorway service stations. I think town centre car parks are critical for the optics to show everyone out there that there is charging wherever you go. And it takes time to run the right procurement processes to make sure that whether you're a supermarket or a local town council, you pick the right provider that's going to be reliable, offer contactless payment and roam and accept everyone's cars, everyone's adapters and connectors. So it's just complicated and it takes a bit of time. So I think this summer is going to be a bit hairy, but I know from the inside of the industry that ourselves and GridServe and Instavolt, there's so many brilliant hubs coming through the year and beyond through next year. So I think there's a few changes that are required around the accessibility laws, around the motorway service stations and the local authorities, and they will allow this huge deployment because we've got two of the critical ingredients. There's so much private money to fund this. There's over £1 billion of publicly committed money. The technology is amazing. I don't know if you've had the pleasure yet of using the new tritium or the new Kempower chargers, but
the one that you've got that looks like a creature from Doctor Who. I mean, it looks amazing. I haven't seen one of those in real life. So which one is that? That's the Kempowers.
That's the balancing. I mean, but the feedback again it's great. You work so hard, you launch these sites, and people love it. And you're like, this is great. We're going to put this everywhere. So the technology's there, the money's there. The final block is the land. And these things are not cheap to install. We're spending between £250,000 and £1 million per site. We need the right land access to build these sites, and that's where I think working with government, we're hoping to release land parcels, be it through planning laws or other targets for the retailers to meet. So it's coming. I would never say the infrastructure today is fit for purpose. It's not, but what's being built is going to be great for the next few years. Certainly.
Yeah. And I mean, it doesn't help when you're talking to someone who's trying to use a charge that doesn't work, but it's a lot better than it was, because I've been driving electric cars for 12 years or something. And I mean, there weren't any rapid chargers when I first drove an electric car. There just weren't any, there were 3-pin sockets. That was all you had. That was the only possibility. So it's improved hugely in that time, but that doesn't really help. But one of the things that I've spoken to a couple of people about in your industry is you mentioned it. They were charging the grid connections and the big enough grid connection because it's very obvious. And you all know this, and I've heard it 1,000 times because I've spoken to them a lot. But the engineers at the National Grid say, look, there's no problem. The power's there. It's just getting it to that. It's in a way, it's the last it's the last mile delivery, isn't it? It's that
Yeah.
getting it to exactly where you want it. There's power in the grid to charge
There is.
millions of cars.
And I used to have the pleasure of working with Graham Cooper in our past lives on building wind farms. And the great thing about the wind farm is you get your grid connection, and the only thing you need to dig through to get to your power is a farmer's field of wheat, which is easy. There might be a dead Roman or something in the field.
Might be a hedge or something,
But the problem now is if what people want is a huge charging hub in the centre of London, well then that 100-metre stretch could be going through 5 different businesses and through the A4. So they're right. It's that last mile. Like, I don't like the argument of there's not enough grid. It's a lie. There is enough power out there in the HV network to deliver everything we need. It's just, can you physically get that cable laid across a dual carriageway, and to make that link? So it's complicated. That's why I think you're seeing the leadership from 4 or 5 charging networks rather than 15 or 20, because it's complicated art. I'd say it's the second hardest thing we do. I think the hardest part is actually running the network day to day with all the firmware and vehicle dynamics that are going on. But it's complicated, which is why it takes time. But again, look at the great hubs being built today. Yeah, they do exist. We know what it looks like. We just got to get them rolled out quicker now. Sorry, go on.
Oh, well, I was only going to ask about that. The solutions that I've seen sort of hints of, and I know some companies are doing it, but where you actually can put in more chargers than the local grid can necessarily support. If you've got a big battery that's a buffer between the grid and the actual rapid chargers, is that something that? Do you think that's going to become more common, or is that still a bit of an esoteric, expensive solution?
Yeah, I think the problem is, in our industry, as there was in renewables, there's always so much hot air and kind of proof of concept going on. Yeah. I think in reality, a battery, if there's no grid at the site, a battery isn't going to help you because you have to recharge the battery. Yeah. We live in a world of rapid charging and ultra rapid charging where you're expecting to deliver the capacity at the site every hour. So again, if you come to my site and I tell you it's a 150 kilowatt charger or 175, that's what you want for your vehicle. So there's no problem saying, sorry, Robert, not right now. We're just recharging the battery. So I don't think the real world commercial application is quite there. But I think where we are there today is, we talked about the Kempowers, the load balancing technology. So if you put in next to me in a Porsche Taycan and I'm in a Renault Zoe, we don't have the same need from the same charging site. So what we really want is that I take the 50 kilowatts I need and you can have the rest. And I think that's where you're seeing great technology providers like Kempower and Tritium. That stuff is established in the market. And it means we can deliver more charging bays, more high power charging sessions from the same grid connection. And that is really smart, because it means no matter what your restriction is on the grid in the first place, you can eke the most out of the cables to each individual customer. And again, even if you and I are both lucky enough to be sat in a Taycan, if I'm at 75% and you're at 20, your need is so different to mine. So I think that's where the really exciting technology is now in terms of what we're going to be rolling out going forward. And again, the feedback's great, and there's more developments in terms of it's not for everyone, but the user interface of watching your power curve on the app. I'm sure it's mainly of interest to our geeky Dr. Set.
I'd love it.
Yeah. There's a lot of great stuff there now we're rolling out.
Yeah, I mean, I quite like the fantasy that you're in the Zoe and I'm in the Taycan, but no, I should be the other way around. I don't deserve either that. But then one of the other things, I've talked to quite a few people who are work in electric vehicle charging, is the charger doesn't work. That immediate assumption that people have when they plug it. And actually, very often it's the car that's the problem. The car has the problem communicating with the charger. Yes. And it's got, those sort of agonizingly annoying teething problems, I think, will get better, because surely it should be absolutely priority of the car maker to test it out on every single possible charger that they possibly can to make sure it communicates correctly. I mean, is that, or am I getting the wrong end?
You think so? I mean, there's one very well-known, very well-awarded electric vehicle that's sold in the thousands, who they will not release the vehicle to the charging manufacturers for testing. So it means that the vehicle goes out into the network, and the first thing we know about it is when we see the calls coming in with a firmware issue. So we have to scramble to get that done. Now, this again is the great thing about the EV industry being so connected. To our call center in the south of Spain is also taking calls for Ionity and other networks. So we know very quickly if there's an issue on the new Golf firmware, for example. But you're right. The key problem we have is that if you're in your brand new £50,000 EV, you don't want to believe that it's your car that's the problem. And it's very hard for our team to tell you I'm sorry, you need to go back to the dealer for a firmware upgrade. So we have a lot of that at the moment. I think this is why we can't change the dynamics with the OEMs, but what we can do is communicate more to you, the driver. So if you think about the ChemPower software, what it will do is it will tell you if is it your car or our charger that's restricting the charge. So people say, why am I only getting 35 kilowatts here? And the charger says restricted by the car or by the charger. So again, we're not going to sit here and complain about the OEMs. We're just going to fix the problem, which is communication to the driver. And the more information we can provide through our systems, the better. And I think that's where, again, the charging networks can do more with the integration between our back office platform and the driver, the charger, and the apps. So we went through a long process. We built our own back office. So we've now got full OCPI technology there, which means we get a lot more messaging and we can control what we send to the charger and back. So I don't think any of the leading networks are sat there whinging about the OEMs. I think we all ask the authorities to not put all the blame on us, but we're just going to get on with the job and try and communicate as best we can to explain why you might not be getting the charge. And there's an amazing difference. If you look at the basic fact of how long does the vehicle give you to start the charge before it times out. So I know that my car takes about 38 seconds, as some cars take a minute and a half, but real basics that you'd hope the driver would be told. And I don't think it's fair to expect every member of staff and the dealers to do it. So we're going to do it. And we're going to get on and work with people like you to just educate this year. Because with the mass market driver, again, we're going to get no free goes here. So
no. I mean, I think it is absolutely fair to be, healthily and hopefully positively critical of the dealership networks. Because, I mean, the classic example that I experienced, and I'm just trying to think if I can, I'm not going to say the make of car. A woman came up when I was actually talking to one of our crew and another person at a car charger where there were 4 rapid chargers. And this woman came up and looked at us and said, I wish I could use this on my car. And I said, what sort of car have you got? And she pointed to it. I said, well, you can. And she said, no, it hasn't got that. It hasn't got the charger thing. And I went, oh dear, that's a shame. So then I said, I went and looked at it, opened the charge port. It's a CCS charger, just normal, but it's got the little cap over the bottom section.
Yes.
They had not told her. She'd literally driven the car. I was in Bristol. She'd driven the car from the other side of the country and was visiting her daughter. She thought she was going to have to plug it in overnight.
Yeah.
And it was just like, and I said, did they not tell you that? No, they didn't tell me anything.
Yeah.
So that is like selling a diesel car and saying, and you go, how do you refuel it? I don't know, off you go. You tell people. It is a disgrace, really. And I mean, that's what I think I've been telling people now. If you're buying a car from a dealer, make them drive you to a rapid charger and make them charge it and show you how it works. Once. They don't have to do it once.
I think the onus is on the OEMs, though. I think the car. I used to manage 15 car dealers in my Volkswagen days, and I think ultimately, clearly, they're there to try and make profit from servicing the vehicles, from selling used cars. The OEMs are in charge of the training and the education, and these dealers must be very concerned about where their future lies right now. So I think there's a huge job between the OEMs, the charging industry, and the government to educate everybody. And some of the rhetoric from the last few months from the SMT around blaming the charging infrastructure is not collaborative for a start. But there's a huge job to be done. And we've taken the view now that rather than fight with the SMT, we're going to get on and just get education out there instead.
Yeah. And I mean, it is that thing. I think also the sort of hub experience from an electric car driver's standpoint is transformative. Yeah. You go to a hub and there's, 20, 30 chargers. You're not kind of approaching it going, oh no, there's going to be someone, it's going to be iced. There's going to be someone else charging, even if they're, my experience with very busy charging bays with Tesla, for instance, it's only happened once, but I once went to the Oxford services on the M40, and I don't know how many charges they got, something like 18, and they were all full. And I went, oh my God, this is it. This is the this is now, oh my God, I hate Tesla, and I hate Tesla drivers. And as I slowed down and stopped, one of them pulled out. And I went, oh, and then I reversed and plugged in, and that turnover, and that was like pre-Christmas, that was a rush. Right? But that's what you need, is that kind of that scale. You then don't worry about it because one of those chargers is going to work, or particularly if it's a hub and there's people there, like at a petrol station, you can go, that number 3 isn't working. Can you sort it out?
You've touched on a major opportunity for us as well, though, because what we're spending so much time talking about now, and again, it comes back to what do we communicate to you, the driver, is imagine if those 18 bays are full. What you want to know is who's going to leave first.
Yes.
How do we create a system whereby the driver, we know how far you're going to charge to, we're sending the power to the right vehicle to get you on a stall as quick as possible. We've done loads of research, and what people tell us is they don't mind getting a slightly slower charge as long as they can get on a bay. What people don't want is not getting on a bay. Yeah. So again, I think this is where now you almost had the competition 2 years ago between the networks of who can adopt contactless quickest. And now it's, who's reliable? And you've got this basket of the 5 great networks that are reliable, contactless. So how do we now compete beyond scale? We're all going to have canopies and 20 chargers. So what then makes you turn left, not right? And that's where we and our peers are spending our time thinking. So again, I think it's so exciting to think about the sites and the tech that's going to come for charging going forward.
Yeah.
Just when we can catch up the momentum with EV registrations at the moment.
Yeah. And then the other experience that I've had twice now, and I will test this out very shortly because I'm just hoping I remember this right, but Fastned in the Netherlands, which I first came across many years ago when we were filming there. And that is the standard experience where you have an app and you put in your details and then you go to the charger and you plug it in and you go, it's charger number 3, and there we go. Oh, it shows number 3, click plus, yes, ching, and it starts charging. And that's great. And it worked. It was fine. It was not a problem. The second time I used it, I got there, pulled up, plugged the car in, got the app out, looked at the car. The car was charging. I didn't know. I had done nothing. Not even. And they've got that working, and which is the same experience as you have in a Tesla. I drive up to a Tesla supercharger, I plug the car in, I don't even think about it, just walk away. It starts charging, and I pay for it, but I pay for it through the car. How soon do you think? Because that, I think, is the step where people who've never driven an electric car before and they buy one at the showroom or they lease one and they go to the charger and you go, how do you do that? Oh, and there's someone helping them. And then from then on, they don't have to do anything at all. That's short. That is my dream. Is that your aim long term?
Oh, I think, look, it's it's clear it's here. It's in Europe. It exists. I think that both Power and Tritium, who we work with, are ready to deploy that the plug and charge solution.
Because that's presumably communication between the car and the charger. That's the critical point there.
It is. I think without getting too technical, the problem or the question mark in it as to how is it going to work is around the certificate. And the big battle for the wallet really is who will own that plug and charge transaction. Will it be the vehicle? Right. Will it be an EMSP? Or will it be Google or Apple or somebody else? Or will it be the latest Chinese TikTok? Whatever the latest app is.
Quickly tell me what an EMSP is. That electric.
Sorry, so the e-mobility provider, the service provider. So if you look at the likes of New Motion or people like ZapMap and ZapPay, like who will you choose to transact with once you've registered your wallet in your vehicle? Now, clearly the OEMs will believe that they will own the transaction going forward, but there's a whole world of disruptors who say we can do it better than the OEMs. And what we as charging infrastructure operators have to work out is how do we want to play that game? So, of course, right now there's one major party in Hubject who are operating a lot of the certificates for plug and charge. And I think, as I said, we've built and we own our own back office. So we are trialing and testing different ways to operate plug and charge on the network. I think the other problem you have is, again, it's the legacy infrastructure point. So brilliant. You could go to Banbury today and plug and charge, and then you're going to drive to another of our sites tomorrow and it won't work. How the hell do you communicate that to people? So I think we're taking our time, we're testing it. Will it play a key role in how people charge in the future? Absolutely. Right. Is it the only answer? No. I think if you look at fleets and the huge number of EVs fleets, there's other different considerations there. So I think, look, it's something we spend a hell of a lot of our time talking about. We've got a tech team developing it. But the bit we're working on is more around certification and the transaction itself in the wallet rather than the car bit, because the car bit works. That's fine. Yeah. As you say, you can do it today somewhere.
Yeah. No, it is. I mean, the thing is, I think we shouldn't be I'm very optimistic about it. I hear and absolutely sympathise with the frustration and the difficulties. And my wife, who's driven we have a Kona, Hyundai Kona, and she's been driving that for, I guess, 3.5 years now, and used public chargers and was very capable and competent of it, and knows which she has her choice. She uses that one and that one there, or that one there. She knows where they go. And what she said is, she never arrived at those chargers 2 years ago or 3 years ago, and there was another car there. No. And now it's always the case. And she said that's a real, sort of post-pandemic. In the last sort of 6 months, she was completely blown away by the increase in the numbers. And and everyone's aware of it. It is a big surprise. If you've been driving electric cars for a long time, it's very, very obvious.
And I think the fact that so many of the networks weren't reliable or have not been reliable to date, apart from this basket 5 or 6, I think it's kind of exacerbated the problem, to be honest with you, because the networks are reliable. Now we're having queues. Now we really need to get more bays on. So, the busiest 10 sites we've got, thankfully, we've managed to get more grid. We're expanding all of them. We're going back and we're ripping out the old chargers and putting in the newer tech as well. So, I think the charging networks get a lot of stick over pricing and reliability. But I think the one thing that me or Adrian Keane at Instavolt or Toddington at Gridserve, the one thing we hate more than anything in the world is when the tweet goes out saying, I couldn't charge here, but the day was saved by Osprey. Like, we all hate seeing failures where you go to competition. All we want is to ensure that every session is reliable. I think we, certainly from our perspective, our uptime is 99.8%. I'm sure the other good networks have the same level. So again, I think it's about raising the bar. Now it's about got this quality product. Let's get it deployed on scale, lots of chargers, lots of bays to give, so that you and your wife don't need to wait. It's going to work. You can access it, but now there's loads of them. And then we make it even better with the communication developments around it as well.
Yeah, no, I think it. I think it can only get better. And I think it's also because, just in case there's people listening to this who, are thinking about getting which is a lot of our audience, thinking about getting an electric car, haven't had one, have heard all sorts of stories. If you have somewhere off the street to park a car and you can charge it at home, you actually don't use the public charging infrastructure as much. I think I was in a really interesting case recently that I went to visit it, and I charged while I was there. The Shell have converted an old petrol station in a really posh part of Fulham, really posh bit of London, and it's now only electric cars. Well, I spoke to the people there. They said the minute it was opened, every bay was pretty much full all day. And the turnover, while I was there, the turnover was really fast. Someone leaves, someone comes, someone leaves. Because there's loads of people who live in that area with cars parked on the street that they charge once or twice a week. And I spoke to one woman who lived 500 meters away from that charger, and she had a BMW i3, which she loves, and it was always a pain, and she had to go miles to charge. She said, I just come down here once a week. That's how she described it. Once a week, charge it, and then go she only uses it locally. Yeah. That is a kind of, you can see that solution, but exactly as you said, that is also really challenging to get the power in that, right in the middle of a massive city. How do you get that power there? I don't know how they've done it.
I think firstly, I think most of the customers we see, they use us once every 3 months. They charge at home when they go on long journeys for more than 250 miles in a day. Then they use public charging. I think the advice to anyone that listens to the show that doesn't have an EV yet or is thinking about it is, trust the sources out there. If you're going to go and use public charging for the first time, look at who is rated highly by ZapMap, by Auto Express, by what car, as you would do if you're going to go and buy a washing machine. Yeah. And try the networks that are recommended. I think what really sticks with us when we get stick in the media is when a journalist just randomly picks a point on a map with no research at all and turns up at a 6-year-old charger. So I think there's a reason why the same charging networks come out in the top 3 every single time. It's because they work every single time. So you've got to stick to the networks that are proven that work. There will be consolidation in the next few years. There will be old chargers ripped out. We're taking over other people's old sites now and putting brand new kit in that always work. So, don't gamble, but there's very easy sources like ZapMap and others to use. Go for those that are recommended, and it will work, and it will be great. You'll have a good time at the site because there'll be great things to do there. So, if you do a random lottery, you might be unlucky. You've got a higher chance of being unlucky that way.
Yeah. But I think that the chances now, still believe the chances of you being really unlucky are diminishing all the time.
Yeah,
That generally speaking, it is becoming more reliable. It is easier to access.
yeah. I think it's 5,500 chargers. I think probably I'm right in saying about 3,000 of them are operated by the major six networks.
Right.
So
Yeah.
they work brilliantly, time after time.
And I mean, there are, I'm not going to mention any names, but there are chargers I now studiously avoid. And I know I'm not alone. And I mean, what that means for that charging company is no one uses it because it's not reliable. And therefore, they're either going to get taken over by someone else or disappear. It's not going to work.
Yeah.
And which is the way it should. Unfortunately, that is a free market capitalist economy writ large, isn't it? That's how that works. And I mean, because it's so exciting now that the new, like you guys and Instavolt and GridServe, are doing it right, because it was that legacy, that first generation, and it was done for all the best reasons. It wasn't nasty. People weren't being nasty, but there was a particular experience I had driving up from London to Edinburgh in a Nissan Leaf, where the chargers just got more and more obscure the further north we went. So they started on the motorways, and we never had one not work. This is 8 to 10 years ago.
Yeah.
That was Ecotricity, their charging network all the way up the M1, or every single one we stopped at worked straight away. It was not a problem. Chademo. Yes. Those chargers worked on Chademo. CCS, forget it. But it was that thing where that there was sort of government money to encourage councils to put in chargers, which they did, but they put them in their own council car park that no one could find. That happened. Yeah. I mean, it was heartbreaking, just you thought, because they weren't doing it to be nasty. They just didn't think it through at all. They just.
And it's good. We've got this hyper-competitive market today where you've got Osprey, Instavolt, GridServe, MFG, all vying to be, to win. And you look at the quality of the latest Shell and BP installations. They're all great installations.
Amazing.
With the point as well. That brilliant providers there. So what I think one thing that's important as well for government to do, and I believe there's an announcement coming, is around the local authorities, because how can you expect a local authority with everything they have on their plate post-pandemic to know how to run a proper tender? And the big danger is where they say, well, we don't want to be left with a white elephant here, so let's just do a 5-year contract, which none of the big operators can fund or engage in. So I think what the government needs to give the councils isn't money, it's advice. It's, guys, this is how you should run a good procurement process for EV charging. We're not saying look at these providers only. We're saying if you test them against these criteria, this is how you end up with a good result. And I think, again, there's so much cash from the private networks like ourselves. The councils don't need that. They just need maybe a bit of human resource to manage the procurement process and to manage all the street works bits. But they need guidance is what they need, because the solutions are there in the market today. I
also think it's going to be a case of once you've seen a charging hub, once you've seen a row of chargers and under a roof with lights, you go, oh, like that. You don't mean one charger behind the toilets at the town hall.
Exactly.
I get it. Yeah, that helps, because I couldn't see that 8 years ago. I could never envisage, the likes of the charging hub at Rugby. Rugby services. When you see the brand new services, you go, I'm never going to wait at Rugby to charge. There's so many chargers there. And so much space, that, and you go, that's all we need is that. And the amount of people I know who drive electric cars that have driven via Rugby, which has taken them miles out of their route. They weren't going anywhere near Rugby, but they've gone there just to have a go because it's so good, and they know it's going. And also, it's going to work. You're not wondering whether you'll be able to charge there.
Yeah. And this is what's exciting is that there'll be so many of that quality of site in the next 6 to 12 months going live, which is great.
Now that is very, very encouraging to hear, because I think we are. There was a time when I felt we were ahead of the rest of Europe, but I think now we've sort of fallen a bit behind, because every time I've been in France, Germany, Netherlands, the charges work. They do. I'm never worried about them not working. It can be annoying getting the right account with the right provider, but you get to the charger and it works. So that and we're getting there. I think now.
Yeah, I think we set the example in terms of contactless payment and these things now, which some of the European nations are following. So it's yeah, I think that, again, the gold standard has been set, and that bar will keep getting raised now because ourselves and the other networks are so competitive. It's only going to get better.
Yes. Let's leave it there, and that's brilliant. You've really cheered me up. I was quite anxious about talking to you, going, "Oh God, charging! It's going to be so difficult."
Yeah.
So really, I mean, I think you're absolutely right. Your positive energy is what it needs, and I'm really impressed. And good luck to you. And I can't wait to use one of the. I've got to write. What's the name of that? The really cool looking space age charger. What's that?
Chem-Power charger. So the
Chem-Power. Yes, I have not had a go on one.
So we have a site. The first 2 sites are live in Wolverhampton and Banbury, and we've got the first canopied hub going live in Essex just by the N25, and then we've got about, I think there's 13 more that have been announced, but there's many more to follow. So we'll look forward to hearing your feedback. Really
I'm going to go to the Banbury one. I can do a route via Banbury. Yes, right on my list.
Banbury and Rugby, too.
I could just keep doing a loop round between the two. Fantastic, Ian. Thank you so much for your time, and good luck, and stick at it.
Thank you so much. Thank you for your time. Take care.
Well, I really hope you enjoyed that. Thank you very much for listening to that. I hope you get a chance to use one of those really new cool. They are really good. It's worth Googling Chem-Power charger, because those are they look like they're next generation. Totally different design. Not a great big white box with some wires coming out the side. Really cool stuff. Ian's an absolute joy. He's going to be on stage with me at Fully Charged Live, which is happening at the end of April and the beginning of May, and so it's really, and they're on display there along with everything you've ever heard of on Fully Charged over the years. The Fully Charged show over the years is going to be at Fully Charged Live, Farnborough, 29th, 30th of April, 1st of May. Fantastic. And we've also just announced that we are running a show next year in Harrogate in the north of England, which is very exciting. We've been up to look at the venue. It's fabulous. It's going to be really, really, I'm so pleased we're doing it. We've wanted to do it for years. It's just having the time, the manpower, person power, and the location. And Harrogate I'd never been before. Never been to Harrogate. Didn't know anything about it. Beautiful town. Amazing cake shop, which I haven't been to, but I'm going to go next time we go up there. Brilliant place. Anyway, that's all. Please subscribe to the Fully Charged Plus podcast, because you're going to get loads of top quality audio and even video entertainment for free, courtesy of Myenergi. That's who's allowing you to do that. I'm going to shut up now. Really nice that you joined us. Please join us again. And as always, if you have been, thank you for listening.